Well, I'm glad I could be here this afternoon. I want to pass around the map where I made a circle where I think the town where I was born was. And you see, that was a map of Europe or Germany in 1933. After the Second World War when the war ended, 1945, they took the border of Germany became, if you see there's one river there called the Oder River, that's now the new border of Germany, and all of the land that was to the east of the Oder River was given to Poland. So you can, now that map is a 1933 map when, before the Second World War, when Germany still had land control and so on. All right, now a little bit about Kristallnacht, which you saw, a YouTube movie, and I want to say first, yes, it really happened, because it's kind of a story that's hard to imagine. Can you imagine, down the road is Watt Street Baptist Church, okay? Can you imagine that if instead of the synagogues, that all the churches would be set on fire by hoodlums, and not only by hoodlums, but by order of the state? That the government, and in Germany, on November 8th, 9th, 1938, the German government, for some reason, got angry at the Jews. It's not uncommon in Jewish history that it happened. But in this case, in a country, Germany, that was, in Europe, a cultural center, a scientific center, an educational center, and yet they picked on the Jews, focused on anti-Semitism, and in addition to the Nuremberg laws, which Sharon talked about, the idea was to make Jews non-citizens. And Kristallnacht, basically, or it's called Kristallnacht because it's the night of the broken glass, when every Jewish shop had its store windows broken, when apartment houses of Jews had their windows smashed. And the sound of the breaking glass, in German called Kristallnacht, it means the night of glass and the night of the broken glass. And I remember my father was one of the officers of our synagogue. And so when he heard that the synagogue had been set on fire, well, he took me by the arm and we went to the synagogue to see if we could rescue items like Torah scrolls, like prayer books, like, I don't know, chumashim, like anything. However, it wasn't possible because the police had made a cordon, a line around the synagogue to keep everybody away. So people stood around and watched the synagogue burn. And it didn't really burn to the ground because it was quite a big brick building, but the total inside was burned, demolished, okay? And either by smoke, by fire, or by water. And the fire department instead of trying to put the fire out, they were putting water on the neighboring buildings to make sure that they wouldn't burn. So obviously the synagogue did not survive. And if I remember correctly, and I tried and I couldn't find, on one of the anniversaries of Kristallnacht, our synagogue became what? A poster child, right? The picture of the burning synagogue was used as a reminder of what had been Kristallnacht, okay? Now, and the very next morning, on the morning of the 9th, one of my father, as Sharon said, my father was a physician, and one of his non-Jewish patients came and knocked on the door, and when my father opened the door, he said, "You better get your act together and get out of here," he was saying to my father, "because the Germans are right behind me, the SS, the military, are right behind me, and they are rounding up all the Jewish men, all the able Jewish men." So my father very quickly packed a small suitcase, said goodbye, and took off. We had tickets. My parents were, I guess, pretty smart. They had seen what was possible to come, and knowing that it surely wasn't going to get any better than it was in 1938, probably going to get worse for Jews. So my father, and you couldn't, well, talk about this a little bit when I talk about immigration, but you couldn't come to the United States just to get on a ship and go, because the United States, America, was just getting over the Depression, and they didn't want any foreigners coming and taking the jobs that were scarce as it was, but they were really supposed to be for American citizens. And the only way you could come to America is if you could find someone in America who would say, "I will vouch for these people, that if they get into trouble either with the law or financially, I'll back them up, I'll pay the bills." All right? So my father found, living in Louisiana, a distant cousin whom he had never met. And they said, "We'll provide." And they provided for my father and two of his brothers. And so my father, on that person's say-so, got a visa, which is a document that it gives you permission to come to America. So my father, visa in hand and passport in hand, but no ticket, because we had tickets, as I'll show you in a minute, we had tickets for January, and here was November, okay? So my father had no choice but to take off. And so he made his way. And when we saw him again in America 2.5 to 3 months later, he wouldn't talk about what happened. He never talked about what happened. So to this day, I really don't know, except he made his way across Germany, as if you look at the map, from one end to the other, to where the port was, and he managed to get on a ship and make his way to America and await us, because he knew that my mother, my sister, and I were scheduled to come to America in January. But Kristallnacht really happened. And it really was, well, if you can say, the beginning of the end for Jews in Germany. It was really the visible sign that Jews were not welcome, that Jews were non-citizens. And if I think back now, Jews in Germany had lived like Jews in America. That they were able to be judges and doctors and shopkeepers, you name it, Jews had done it. But until the Nuremberg laws and until Kristallnacht, and that was really the beginning. It was, as I said, they were rounding up men to take them to labor camps, and that was the beginning of the end. So, next step. Oh, who is this?
Your teddy bear.
This is my teddy bear, my old teddy bear. He, she, it, I don't know, can't tell, is now almost 82 years old. Wow. Huh? I got him from my aunt for my first birthday. And when we were getting ready to leave Germany in January of 1939, my mother said, you all have lots of toys, or had lots of toys, I'm sure. Now you're much too busy with computers, but there was a time when children had toys. And I had a lot of toys, and my mother said, you could take one item, one thing. So it became the one thing. And I don't know if you can see. Well, I carried him in a little thing I had on my back when I got on the ship. And he made his way to America and has been around all this time. And Sharon reminded me I should tell the story of why does he look like this? Okay, you notice he has no ears and no eyes, and all this is. He used to have a music box, and now nothing. Okay, so after we got settled in America, I took him to a doll hospital in New York City, and they wanted $300 to fix him. And I said, no, it's not worth it. Oh well, I'm just going to ignore it. So it'll stop in a minute. I'm not going to go fish it out of my... Nobody ever calls me on my phone. I never get. Half the people don't even know my phone number. So, what you did this, and so I decided, no, we're not going to, upgrade it, not at all. So I like it better this way. And he tells a story, and if we put ears back on him and put new fur, what? There wouldn't be anything to see. But this is, and he's gone with me wherever I have gone, okay? And now he sits in my study at Carroll Woods in Chapel Hill, and he sits on the windowsill so he can look out the window. But, I haven't figured out what happens in the end. I have to write in a will to whom I'm going to leave. This is a treasure, ladies and gentlemen. This is he is priceless. You can't and I will tell you, I don't know, 10 years or so ago, maybe more, we had an exhibit of the Holocaust by the Jewish community, and it was done in the Duke Library. And the title of the exhibit was Things We Brought With Us. And people had, porcelain and clothes and they made an exhibit out of it. And this guy stole the show. I'm embarrassed, but he really stole the show. The press put him on the center of the front page of the exhibit. This guy was. So, or she was. I don't know. They were. No, that doesn't mean it. I don't like it. So since I'm a man, I basically say he, and if I was a woman, it'd probably be she. But so I have to be careful. So the teddy bear, okay, I like it that way. And I don't have any others. I mean, this one is really. And today I have talked one more thing about him. I had a thought today that in our bedroom at Carol Woods, we have 2 or 3 stuffed animals that, sit on the bed when the bed is not being used. And I thought maybe it's time to move them from the windowsill to the bedroom. So I don't know, maybe I have to discuss it before I make the move. So anyway, that's who he, and he's been around to other talks that I've given on the Holocaust. So here he is, great guy. Just witness to the whole thing. All right, that's about Kristallnacht, and I will tell you one thing. About Jewish life in Germany before all this started was pretty good. I mean, my father, we had a lovely home, and I had friends, and I had a kindergarten, but then something very tragic happened. Jewish children were not permitted to go to school with non-Jewish children. And I don't mean private school, no school. So the Jewish community was stuck with all of us. I mean, what do you do with kids when they're not in school? What are you supposed to do? So in one of the rooms in our apartment house became a one-room schoolhouse. So all of the children of all of the ages were all put in one room, and we sat like this, except in rows, from 8 to 3, 9 to 3, whatever. And I remember we had one elderly gentleman who was our teacher, but we didn't learn anything. Because if you have kids of high school age and kids of first grade, what are you going to teach? So his responsibility was to keep us from getting into trouble. So we would sit, and sometimes we'd bring a book or something else to keep us busy, and he would walk around the room, keeping the students in line or in their seats. And that's how that's how I started school. And I came to America at age 8.5, 9, and 9-year-olds, what grade are they in? Third or fourth, right? Let's say third or fourth. So here I come to school in New York City. I'd never been in a school in the whole time, right? I had never been to preschool. I had never been to kindergarten or first or second grade. I had no idea what you do in school, except that there's somebody who walks around telling you to be quiet. So here I come, and age 8.5, 9, third grade, right? PS 146 on the Upper West Side in Manhattan. I didn't know a word of English. I sat in our classroom. They could have been speaking Chinese. I didn't know a word of English, nor was there anybody in the room who could translate for you. So here I am. I remember this one incident, then I'll move on. I remember this one. I desperately, I see you guys with Sharon. Can I go to? Oh yes, go on. Take as long as you need, right? I raised my hand, right? I want to go. Where do you think I want to go, right? Right? Teacher didn't pay attention. She was busy writing on the blackboard. I didn't know what she was writing, but I need to go to the... And unfortunately, it was too late. Yeah, so that's one of my memories of starting school in America. All right. Now, that leads me to being an immigrant. Well, here's what it looks like to be an immigrant. Arriving in New York, I made the headline of the New York Herald Tribune, which doesn't exist anymore, except if you go to Europe, you can read the Herald Tribune. It is the European edition of the New York Times, now called the Herald Tribune. And that's me and my sister, okay? I know you're probably going to glare from this, right? But this is on the ship, the SS Manhattan, all right? And we were looking at the Statue of Liberty that oh, be quiet. That's the picture of me and my sister arriving in America, and we were caught by the photographer as it looks like typical immigrant kids. And I have one of my grandsons was a student at the Lerner School, and they were doing a project on the what do you call it? They were doing a project on family history project and on the Holocaust. And so he saw that picture, and he got dressed up with a coat and a hat and black boots, rubber boots, and he acted as if he was me, and told my story that way in class. And anyway, so coming to America, number one problem, language. Number two problem, what kind of clothes do you wear? Okay? In those, you all don't have them anymore, but there used to be knickers, okay? Pants that came right below the knee. They don't exist anymore, except maybe pedal pushers or something, but that was the... But nobody ever told my mother that in America boys wear knickers with long socks. So I was wearing long pants, and everybody looked at me like, who is he, And it's very hard when you're not dressed right and you don't know how to speak right to be an immigrant. You're an outsider. You don't know the rules, right? You don't know the games. It's just, I don't know how you all do it. I know where you learn. You know where you learn? Not here, but I know where you learn. You learn in preschool, and you learn in kindergarten, and you learn in first grade, and that's how you learn to be together with other children. You learn what you're supposed to know when you come to school. You learn to read. You learn to write. You learn. I know you know how to speak English before you go to school, but you learn the proper way to... Well, all of that, I didn't learn. I had to learn it all in the third grade. And that was tough. And it was very hard and very, emotional and very, just, it's hard to be in. If you know, some of you may know people who live in Chapel Hill who come from other countries. Huh? If you know anybody, ask them sometime what life is like. What it means to get used to being in America. And that's really what was hard. And
can you talk a little bit about tenement life in New York City?
Oh, yeah. When we came to America, we lived on the Upper West Side in Manhattan on 161st Street. And when at the time, now it's no longer that way, but it used to be the place where German immigrants, where everybody lived. We lived in a woman in an apartment house of 10 rooms where 10 families. Each family had a room. So here was my mother and my father and my sister and me, all 4 of us in one room. So how do you manage that? Well, my father and I would sleep in one bed, and my mother and my sister would sleep in another bed. And then they had a big dining room where all the families would come to eat, and you'd take your turn. You wouldn't, the room wasn't big enough for all the 10 families, so they, tonight you're the first night shift, tomorrow night you may be the second shift. And we lived like that for over a year, while my father and mother learned English, and while my father studied. In order to be a physician in America, you had to take the license exam, and in order to take the license exam, you had to be able to read the license exam in English. And my father had already been a doctor for more than 20 years, but when you come to America, it's like starting over. And my mother, she learned English, and she took care of the 2 of us. And she also, and we really didn't have any money, so my mother would go to the grocery store, and she would buy the dented cans and 2 or 3 day-old bread, and whatever else was on sale, so that we would have food to eat. When we moved out of that big apartment house, or that apartment arrangement. And when we moved out of there, we moved finally to a 2-bedroom apartment of our own, not with any other families, on 157th Street. And, I don't know if I should say, you know what bed bugs are? You know what bed bugs are? Well, there wasn't as much room for us because the bed bugs ruled the place. And it was very hard to keep clean. And now bed bugs apparently are back in business. So we had bed bugs in the apartment. Not very comfortable. And then, that's tenement life in New York. And then my father, after a year of study, passed the license exam, and now the trick was to find a place for the family to live. Find a place where there are Jews that to live with, right? So we ended up living on Long Island. That's where basically I grew up, Long Island, New York, okay? So, that's being an immigrant, okay? Well, it's time for questions. I know what I left out, right? Yeah. But anybody have any questions? Yes.
How much could you
like interpret? Because you probably learned a lot as you got older to this point because you have a computer and to track things that you probably didn't know. But how much did you actually understand, like at like their childhood age?
Initially, I understood. At the beginning, I understood very little, and it was up to my parents, who knew more English than I did, and they tried. Okay, and there was also a plug for the JCC. There was also a Jewish community center on the Upper West Side of Manhattan where we would go to meet other immigrants and to learn how to socialize, learn how to be together, learn certain phrases and customs and about the foods and about what it means to be in America, okay? So, yeah, there were people in the community who tried to teach, okay? Yes?
How long did it take you to learn English?
How long did it take? I'm still learning English. No. How long did it take me to learn English? Oh, probably really learn English, probably a couple of years. Yeah. Yes, Gabi.
Was the food really different here than it was in Germany?
Was the food? My goodness, I really don't remember. I don't know.
But your mom would have cooked.
Yeah.
Depends when she was using.
Well, the thing is that before we had came to America, that's a good. My mother never cooked. We had, in Germany, my father was a successful physician, okay? Which means that we had a maid. I was raised by a nanny. My mother had a cook. She never cleaned. She never changed my diaper. No, a nanny to change it. No. Wives of successful doctors in Germany don't do that. What they do is they take their kid for a walk in the baby carriage to meet other mothers who are doing the same thing. So now you come to, oh my God, I don't know, which end of a pot do I put on the stove? That's the way it really, it's now funny, but it was then, very, and then one thing I remember my mother doing is she would open up a can of soup. But instead of putting it in the pot, you put hot water in the pot, you boil the water, you put the can standing in the boiling water, and that's how you heat it up. Very clever. You don't have to wash the pot, man. But that's how. So I don't. To answer your question, we would buy, like I said, what was on sale, what was cheap. So eggs, sometimes were cheap. A lot of times. Potatoes. You know that you can make great soup out of potato peelings? That's potatoes. Then you eat mashed potatoes and you eat the soup. That's a meal. It's like, look, see what they serve in the soup kitchen sometimes, okay? Yeah.
What kind of food did you guys eat in Germany?
Whatever you want, fish and meat. I hate to put it to, we were well off in Germany, okay? Which means that whatever you want to buy, you buy. I was not old enough to really care about the menu and what was served. So I don't remember, I'm not trying to put you're off. So, but whatever really, good meat, good chicken, good fish, yes.
Do you ever remember feeling scared while you were still in Germany?
Do I remember? Oh yeah, my mother was very great at making us scared-er. Well, when my father left, wasn't so bad when my father was around. I mean, he was the tough guy. But after my father left, my mother was left with 2 small children, and whenever she would hear a noise outside in the street or in the apartment house, she would say to my sister and me, "Get under the bed and don't make a sound." That's pretty damn scary, you know? There's a world, did you know there's a world under the bed? And it's pretty safe, I think. So that's so my mother was very scared, and we caught being scared. Yes, I remember. Oh, you just, I had my first job as a rabbi was in Athens, Georgia in 1962. And that was a time at the beginning of the civil rights movement, and the Ku Klux Klan would march down the street in front of our house a couple of times a week, and it was the same kind of feeling, like scary. Now, I know the Klan wasn't after me, but it just felt like that. Yeah.
What were your actual experience with the bed bugs?
They were just very very hungry. And if you ever been bitten by more than one mosquito at any one time, then you have an idea. Okay? Yeah.
Were you actually in a Jewish building while Crystal Rock happened?
I was not in a Jewish building. No, I stood outside the synagogue with my father while the synagogue was burning. Okay, but never let me inside. Anyway, as an 8-year-old, my father wasn't going to take me inside, so no. Yes.
Were there other children in school in New York that you could bond with because you were all from Germany?
There were 3 or 4 others in the same class with me. And yeah, we all sat the last seats in the last row in the classroom. Okay? I remember that. Yeah.
Frank, what do you say to people who deny that the Holocaust ever existed?
I think I would tell them they should have their heads examined. Reading a book is not going to do it. Watching YouTube they're convinced. There are people who, there's a group of people in our society who, number one, we're doing this now with the gun control business. They only want to instill fear in you. The government is going to come and take away your weapon. Not going to happen. But they're living in another reality. Well, I would say the Holocaust deniers are living in another reality. Some of them are anti-Semites. And some of them just can't believe that such a thing could ever happen. That a country like Germany, like I said, was, at the top of the civilized world, would use their civilized knowledge to do that. They can't believe it. But yes, it happened. But I would say, well, I don't know, I'll take you. You want to, but even if I would take them to the Holocaust Museum, I don't know. I don't know if it would sink in. What would sink in? I have no idea, really. But they're living in another, they choose to live in another reality, and they probably think deep down that it's a good thing it happened to the Jews. Huh? And I want you to know that the way it has been in world history, every time there's an economic difficulty in the world, the Jews become the targets. Because we are in the economic triangle, we're up, not the top, we're in this upper middle, and you get pushed from both sides. The working class wants to be where you are, and the owning class don't want to have anything to do with you. Yeah.
Have you ever been back to Germany?
Have I ever been back to Germany? How do you know? Yeah, last summer, after much debate and thinking and talking to people, we go to Israel every spring or summer, and we have friends who have gone to Germany from Israel, Israelis who are studying at one of the universities in Germany. And so we were in Israel, and we really wanted to go visit these people. And at first, my wife, Pat, she says, I'll go to Germany, you stay here in Israel, okay? And that was plan one. And I thought about it, and I thought about it some more, and I said, you know, it's about time that I take the leap. And so I said, Pat was going to go for 2 weeks. And I said, I don't want to be in Israel by myself for 2 weeks. So one day I said, Pat, I'm going to go with you. And she was really shocked. And you don't really know that I had been conducting my own war against Germany practically all my life. I wouldn't buy any German products. I wouldn't speak German. I didn't read German. Finished with Germany, okay? And I discovered that I'm now about the only one in the entire world that's doing that. Everybody else has made peace with it. Oh, there's another one. Hey! We have now I feel better. But so after and Pat kept saying to me, you have to remember that it's 2012 and not 1939. And I kept saying that over and over to myself. It's 2012 and not 1939. And we went to Germany. Spent 4 days in Berlin and 4 days in this small town where the university was. And we took a day-long tour with a Jewish tour guide who does Jewish Berlin. And we went from one memorial to the other. Spent a whole day going from one memorial to the other. And each is more heart-rending than the one before. And the thing to know is that those memorials were built by Germans, not by Jews. There's no Jewish money in those memorials. It's all German government money. Now that's amazing if you think about it in the world. Wouldn't happen in America. You want to build a Holocaust museum? There's Jewish money in that Holocaust museum. It's all right, but it's amazing. And they were very moving memorials. There was one place where there were plaques for all of the synagogues that had been in Berlin. There were a dozen of them. And here's a place, a lawn with, in the ground you see the plaque for each synagogue with how many members and when they had services. And there were the rows and rows of these plaques. Then there was, let's see, one memorial was a library room with books of pictures of people who had lived in the neighborhood. Like Trinity Park, okay? They listed all the Jews in the particular neighborhood with pictures, with biographies, and it all says, on the bottom of each page, says deported. Now we all know that. And then there's a very famous train station in Berlin from which all the Jews of Berlin were taken to concentration camps. And there are plaques along the track which say the date and how many Jews and to where they went. And then there's one that I'll never forget. There is one neighborhood of Berlin which has on the lampposts orders of the Nuremberg laws that apply to Jews. For example, that says Jews are not permitted to own telephones. Okay? Jews had to be off the street by 7 o'clock. And on each, as you walk along the sidewalk, there are these plaques on the telephone pole. And one more memorial, as you asked me. There's called tripping stones. In the sidewalk, there is a stone on the corner with the name of a family that used to live in the neighborhood and when they were deported. And you walk along and you trip over the stone because it's, that much higher than the sidewalk. Okay? But remember that all of these memorials, I was totally blown away by it. They're all built with German government money. They want the people to remember.